Day 3 of Detroit Lions training camp's observations are here, and we're going to react to them. So let's get right into it. So yes, we're back with another training camp video. More takeaways from training camp. There's no practice tomorrow, so I'm hoping to get something out on Dose of Draft. Definitely subscribe to that channel. Hey, look, I know there's no draft content, okay? But you got to believe me. It's coming at some point. But no, today we have training camp to discuss, and there's so much to dive into because we have a montage of wide receivers versus defensive backs, and we're going to be reacting to that today. There's a lot of awesomeness there from Terrion Arnold, so we got to get into that. But there's also a lot of injury updates that Dan Campbell gave us today, so we'll start there first. Some of the significant injuries, first off, Miles Frazier. This is not the kind of update that I was hoping for. September or October, it sounds like they're aiming for with him, dealing with a knee injury. We know that he was kind of banged up in the lower body back in college, specifically with the ankles. So this is not a fantastic update. We have seen before a day 3 pick not be available. Christian Mahogany last year, not be available, gets back by the regular season. He ultimately jumps a guy and takes over the starting position throughout the season. So it's possible that Miles Frazier could still do that, but this is definitely a setback to not get to see him. He was primarily a right guard in college, so jumping a guy like Graham Glasgow is going to be difficult, but I thought that was a spot that was potentially on the table. Now, we've heard Graham Glasgow seemingly talk about how happy he is that he gets to be a right guard once again going forward. He thought that's what it was going to be when he initially signed here. The Lions suggested, but if you had to play left guard, can you do it? And he was like, well, yeah, I guess I can. And then he ultimately had to play left guard because we signed Kevin Zeitler, and Zeitler is a right guard basically only. So Graham Glasgow had to settle into that position. But how happy he is now that it's like, hey, it's back to being a right guard. This is what I signed here for. And remember, he got a 3-year deal. He got a nice deal with the Lions. He was coming off a really strong year just 2 seasons ago. And again, last year, I didn't think it was a significant drop. We did a full video actually on this. I didn't think it was a significant drop. I thought it was similar in pass pro. He has some really rough games in there. It's just that to me, some of the athleticism didn't necessarily look there. And you think about some of the versatility that he brings and some of the ability to move and get up into the second level. But that said, just going back and looking at some of that 2023 film, and he was obviously banged up a lot last year too, you could definitely understand why you'd be more comfortable on the opposite side, right? Just in terms of footwork and the positioning and the leverage to that, settling into blocks, all the entry points, because in 2023, that's seemingly where he thrived. I mean, that guy was powerful. He was kind of a brick wall at the point of attack, and specifically as a run blocker, the combo blocks, the fitting, the second level body control, right? He's not maybe the most bendy athlete. He's a little bit on the taller side for an interior lineman, but for Graham Glasgow, he always played with fantastic body control, and he could stay connected with it in some awkward positions. Specifically as a run blocker, it added so much versatility because then he could get out and run. I don't think anything maybe significantly is going to change versus last year, but it should be a positive update that he's more comfortable where he is. And Miles Frazier would be the guy that I thought was directly going to compete with him because right now that backup offensive line battle is pretty fierce. Tristan Colon, Kingsley Yegukan, and Michael Nee seemingly battling for the backup center position. Now, Graham did say that during the offseason, he worked at center just in case he was needed to go there because, of course, the idea is Tate Ratledge being the center, and it sounds like they're primarily just leaving him at that center spot. I think Dan Campbell said that it's like he's drinking out of a fire hose right now. It's a lot being thrown at him, but that's something that they were comfortable with back at what they saw in college, also knowing that he did practice at center. Shout out to the scouts for getting that info, and who he had to play against, of course, at Georgia. That competition would have been fantastic, so fantastic reps, even if it's not in-game reps. Again, we have that video out there as well. Definitely a tough battle right now. Everybody seemingly is having to show flexibility. Nitain Mutai, maybe not center, but you got to play both guard positions then. Sourcel, he's saying that he's working at all 5 positions. So the versatility is a big must for these players. And of course, Tristan Colon's comfortable with that. I think Kingsley Yegukan has a skill set to work at guard. Even Dan kind of praised some of the athleticism. He definitely has the strength, I think, to hold up at guard a little bit better than maybe a guy like Michael Neese specifically did. But again, Neese is a very good positional blocker, so he makes it work in that sense. I think especially if you think about him as a zone blocker, a guy that can cut you off, a guy that can just create angles, and you can work off of him as a back because of that, specifically because of how he gets to his spots. Lil Dorsey, significant injury at the end of last year. They're saying the end of camp, they're hoping to get him back. He was the guy that could be the closest to returning, which is great because the cornerback position right now is just thinner. Now, we did get DJ Reed back. He did have his 3rd child, so congratulations, DJ Reed. That's amazing. So after having his 3rd child return to practice, which is pretty incredible as well. But also on top of that, getting a little bit of that depth back would be nice. And Khalil Dorsey, for me, if we can get him back by the end of camp, I think we could be in a good spot there. Now, it'll be a little bit difficult with some of the battles for the back end, right? How does that shake up when you have the Rocky Sins and you have potentially Stanley Thomas Oliver who's working with the trainers? Like, how does that affect him making the roster? Because I do feel like he's in a roster type of bubble. I think he's probably the next guy in is how we listed him, but I think he's still somewhat in that bubble, though he did get the 2-year deal. So the Lions clearly like him. Dan said that his speed is there. It's just about the transitions now, the plant and drive. Lil Dorsey, a guy that I'm a big fan of. I think he's a huge piece this year because to me, he can kind of step into that Kindle Vildor role. And I think he's one of the guys that in a small sample size, so it's hard to judge this. I do think year after year after year, he actually has shown signs of just getting better and better and better. From jump, he was impressive in preseason, and I think that he has shown that through his time. Malcolm Rodriguez, the update was October, which I'm pretty sure is a positive. I think last time we heard it from Malcolm, it was November. So now they're saying October, which sounds great. Kai Wingo, he's saying September, which I think is kind of in line with what was expected there, considering his injury, considering the recovery time. It could have been like at this time. Right now, just kind of working back to getting to his strength before the injury, right? Being the explosive player before the injury and the movement skills before the injury. But September, beginning of the season, if it's early September, that'd be outstanding. And I think that that is a very reasonable timeline from everything that we've heard up to this point. So not a big surprise there. Again, Stanley Thomas Oliver, and also who has an undisclosed injury, and Ennis Rakestraw working with the trainers. Again, it shouldn't be that significant with Rakestraw from what we heard. 2 injury updates today, though. Sion Vaky, and apparently Sion Vaky and Roy Lopez both banged up. But according to Dan, hopefully not major for either one of these guys. Thinks a few days. Again, they'll have the day off. Maybe a few days beyond Friday because Friday they put the pads on. So few days for both of those guys. Roy Lopez, the injury sounded awful. So I didn't even want to, it sounded rough. But I'll say it anyway. If you haven't heard it, having someone step on your foot and he said it got twisted, the cleat got twisted on his foot. Honestly, that would make me just really question if I want to come back. You know what I mean? Wait a minute. I don't know if I want to run it back. I'm going to be honest with you. That next day I'm back, I'm wearing 3 pairs of socks. There's no doubt. I have some kind of wrap going on. Broderick Martin apparently left practice with an injury as well. We don't really have any updates beyond that it's a foot injury at this point. Brad Holmes did speak on the radio about Aleem McNeil, and within one of the statements that he had about, his confidence in the defensive line, speaking of having drafted Tyleek and after the Levi injury specifically, and the confidence they have there, Dan also spoke to that where it's hey, we have guys, we have guys there. He brought up Pat O'Connor and his ability to literally play everywhere.
Kickoff return. Watch him. I mean, he's a pretty smooth athlete for a big man. Play the nose, play the 3, play the big end. He's versatile, and that's why he just keeps competing to stay on rosters, man, because it's hard to ignore a guy like him. He does so many different jobs, if you get him to the game, you're going to be able to use him.
DJ Reader, who he said that can not only get an edge, but it can also push the pocket. DJ Reader can get after the quarterback. Would prefer him to not be the primary interior rusher, but he can add some juice. Started to kind of come to life a little bit there. Not at the extent that you want to have your best interior rusher, but he can be a very nice complementary piece if you can get it elsewhere. Roy Lopez into that mix. I personally point out Miles Adams. Dan Campbell brought up Raekwon Williams, and then also showing some love to Keith Cooper, right? Keith Cooper, the undrafted free agent from Houston. I thought he initially signed Dennett, came in for a workout, then they signed Keith Cooper, a guy that they seem to really like, kind of getting second string reps behind Pat O'Connor at this spot. They're kind of finding them within maybe that big D end role as a 4-eye that can get upfield and maybe cause a little bit of havoc. Brad Holmes also threw within that statement that, hey, Aleem McNeil potentially could be a little bit ahead of schedule. Aleem McNeil, I don't actually know exactly what the initial expectation was, so I guess they have that in their heads. We don't really know. We can kind of estimate that, second half of the season. But Dan, the thing that he's already told us is really missing the beginning of the year. So I don't know where that falls into play. If we got this guy back by midseason, that would be outstanding. Speaking of some of these observations, we're continuing to get positive updates with this receiver room, and also with the backup quarterback position. Cal Allen serving as the backup quarterback today, the third string being Hendon Hooker. Those guys continuing to rotate, and we keep hearing good things about these two performing, the comfortability that they have right now. Again, there's no pads on, so it does change some things, but I also think about just the supporting cast that these guys have. We'll see in pass pro, right? That's just something that has to come together, and on paper it should be better just in terms of experience there. But specifically when I think about the weapons, I think it's because the Lions have legitimately really strong weapons for the second and third units. And it sounds like Tesla and Lovett specifically taking second and third team reps. But Tesla, a little bit of mixing in first team. Hey, I'm keeping my eye on Isaac Tesla. It's still on the table that he has a Kenny Golladay type of path where in training camp he just continues to show out. And ultimately it's week 1, this guy's fantastic. I think it's on the table. I thought, going in, it's going to be a little bit slow slower, so I thought around the draft video, but I think he can have that kind of training camp, at very least with the second and third units, and it sounds like they're very comfortable with them early, and Tesla, to me, is just going to be a quarterback's best friend. So it's not a huge shock that we're hearing positive news, but I think having that kind of supporting cast, I think this is one of the deeper receiver units that we've had. When you think about the depth, Jacoby Keeney-James, we saw a clip of him making a little bit of a high point grab in traffic. Apparently, he's doing some big work after the catch. Had a big play today that he broke on a little bit of a slant run after catch. That transition quickness that he had. Keeney James was just an absolute playmaker back at UMass. The undrafted free agent signings. When you think about the vets, Malik Taylor, his route running, Ronnie Bell, both those guys have always been legitimate route runners to me. Maybe not overly athletic, but both those guys are legit route runners. And then you throw into the mix having two young guys that aren't starters. They don't have to be thrown into that role because you have four guys in front of them. That's a really deep wide receiver. Connect earlier because you have that kind of talent that's working with that group. You know, in the past, it was who was going to shine of the second and third string, right? Tom Kennedy at the beginning was the guy that would shine within that group. And it would always kind of bounce into Chase Cota. Remember, Drummond was pretty good. Someone would shine there, and it was like, okay, one guy would stand out. Last year, Isaiah Williams was really nice, an undrafted free agent signing. Look, man, this year, I just think we're deeper. We have a couple of those undrafted free agent signings. I would have loved to keep Isaiah Williams, by the way. But I just think it's a little bit more top-heavy for those second and third string units. So that does make sense. The big pass of the day, though, was noted as Jared Goff to Brock Wright up the seam, Jack Campbell in coverage. As soon as I hear that, I think of the Minnesota touchdown. I think that was in our first year where we were kind of getting it together. We threw that seam pass. It's like got trapped on his shoulder, and he scored a touchdown from like 25, 30 yards out. Continue to hear positive updates with Nate Lynn. Sounds like Nate Lynn was very effective again today, blew up a screen, had a crossover win as a rusher. We mentioned this yesterday, but again, his first preseason game was outstanding. It just got cut short due to injury, and we didn't get to see him again. And even just going back and looking at Nate Lynn, like, again, I questioned some of the body type and being able to stay in against the run, but the vision was there against the run. That was noticeable. He's not maybe overly long, but, man, the entry, the hand usage was noticeable. So if he can kind of connect that together and be an effective run defender as a rusher, he was just as crafty as it got. And he gives me vibes of, I won't say James Houston exactly, but similarly to James Houston, he could be so crafty at the top of the rush. James could bend like crazy, and he could fly off the ball. He was very unique, and I don't think Nate Lynn has that kind of athleticism, but he's very agile. He's very crafty at the top of the rush. He throws a lot at you. He's got the spin move. He's got the clubs. He's got the skips. There's a lot of different unique entry points, the way that he can open up your chest, the way that he can change pace. There's a lot of craftiness to his game. So I'm very pumped. I think he's going to be one of the players that are really exciting to watch as we head into preseason. Two running back sets. We constantly hear about the Lions utilizing both Gibbs and Monty in two running back sets. We saw Monty have a big reception seemingly over the middle of the field today in one of the clips that the Lions posted. Sion Vaky, who of course is now down with the injury, Dan Campbell called it a setback because he's a guy that they believe with his kind of explosiveness, his power, his versatility, which I always think about his pass catching skill set as mentioned yesterday, that was a guy that they could potentially used in a lot of different ways, and now it's kind of a setback because you can't really do that with him not here. So now when he gets back, you have to kind of reset on all of those things. But they seem to have some like real big visions for what it can be. Have your two established running backs here. There's not like a spot that you have to put him in. He doesn't have to hold down this role, so we can't try things with him. Like he's in a role where it seemingly is you can just figure out what he does well and what becomes a matchup issue and just use him there. Special teams value is, of course, also there as well, so that's super valuable. That'll keep him on the team. But in terms of offensively, the ways you can use him, the first observation video we did, I was thinking about it like, man, why not kind of use him as a fullback? Like I'm watching Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame lead block for his quarterback. Could that guy not clear out a lane? Because that guy with that kind of power and that kind of vision, could he not be the guy to lead the way? And then also I can flip it out to him, right? Go boot action. I flip it out to Sion Vaky. That's exactly what I want catching it in space, right? I can run a fullback screen to that piece. Of course, I think you could line him up like a receiver like you did at high school. So I love the idea of them being a creative with how they use Vaky. We got to see that pass-catching skill set last year in a small sample size, but I think there's a lot of ways you can use him too, especially if he is that kind of player with that kind of toughness. We know that he's got his own like unique running style, but man, he was a handful to drag down back at Utah, and he doesn't really have much wear and tear at all as a running back specifically. So him with that safety background, like I just think like you could really lean into like this can be our physical presence right there, and then he has all the other skill sets where all of a sudden now that guy is a real threat to get the football if you just handed it to him. There's a lot of different things you could do with that pre and post. You could come out in a shotgun split back, reduce down to an I form that's offset, and all of a sudden he's in that role. Like I just think there's so many fun things that could happen. So hopefully he gets right because they seem to have some big plans for him. Alex Anzalone gave an update. Now, shout out to Pride of Detroit. I couldn't find a video on this. I don't know if there was a video, but I guess they spoke to Alex Anzalone, and he was very disappointed with the fact that he hasn't been able to land a contract extension with the Lions. As Jeremy Reisman states, he said he's surprised he hasn't gotten a new deal yet and was clearly disappointed, but deferred specifics on negotiations. Said he still plans to practice and play without a new contract if it comes to that. Now, based on kind of the quotes that they gave, it sounds like he's just taking it day to day. He said that he's dealing with a hamstring injury, really didn't give a timetable on like how long that was going to be. He's like, I just don't know. It seemed like he's just not really sure what he wants to do with this situation. I'm glad that he is showing up, and Dan Campbell, like he said, I refuse to believe that there would be anything like that he is holding in. I refuse to believe that. It's kind of clear that he would definitely want to retire a Lion, and for him, he said his production, play, and where the market is why he's been kind of pushing for that new deal. And we've seen it really just through social media posts and him highlighting the production that he's brought on the field, and that's all understandable. Like I said this before, I completely understand Alex Anzalone's side. For training camp, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know that he was going to show up, and again, we're not considering this a hold and he's dealing with a hamstring injury, but I completely understood the idea of Alex Anzalone being aggressive to kind of make a stance of like, yo, I want to get a new deal here. Let's get this thing done. I'm going to last year my contract, where my price point is at, the way that I played, the value I am to this team, and the value that I am to Jack Campbell because of how unique my skill set is to play alongside him, the fit that we have schematically here, my ability in man coverage, which makes it really all go. Like for the Lions, so much of their strength is their safety position and their linebacker position with Alex. Like that trio is so strong in man coverage that even at times where you had some up and down from cornerback play, that was always something you could rely on. The Lions side, I've also mentioned that I do understand where it's difficult to see giving him an extension, not because you don't want to, but just because you see the future outlook, and it's like, how do we get to a point where this is fair to him, but also at the same time we're comfortable of giving this kind of money. It's like, I'm just not playing because it was none of that. We'll just have to see, right? Like he doesn't know when his timetable is to return. My guess is, my slight lean is he's not going to get a new deal with the Lions. And obviously, I'd love to keep Alex Anzalone. I'd love for him to retire a Lion. I'm a massive fan of that player specifically. Got to see Dominic Lovett make like a big grab over the middle of the field. I liked it because it was an underhand pass catching technique, which is nice to see him be able to rotate those comfortably. Kind of looked like he got trapped a little bit, but he definitely used his hands as a catcher, and he got out really quickly. And that's the key for him, transitioning, tucking it, getting out. That way, it's not that process of, hey, there's the reception, now finish, and then go. Like at times it didn't feel like it was always that well connected, so it was like, okay, things are staying too loose here. Let's keep this process really fluid. Let's keep it smooth. Let's go from catch to tuck very quickly. It's kind of that juggling of the football. You just want to see that smooth transition. So that'll be something I'm keeping an eye on as we go through all of this. That one looked okay. You had him a little bit kind of like juggling through his hands, but he gets out really quickly, and you could definitely see that transition speed. We just need to have strong hands. That way that thing does not get jarred loose. That said, let's dive into some of the highlights that we were given from, I think this was day one, wide receiver versus defensive backs. And there's about 10 clips to go through here, so let's go right through them. Jameson Williams, he runs an absolutely beautiful route here. He's matched up with Brian Branch. Branch is a handful to deal with. We know this. Vertically, he doesn't have the speed of Jameson in any way, but he is so smooth, so fluid. He plays his hands really well, gets on your hip. He's really tough to deal with, and he's so balanced and so consistent. Just a man cornerback or as a man defensive back in general, but this was such a nice setup by Jameson Williams. That's what stood out to me. He goes to kind of that lateral skip. He ends up getting Brian Branch's hips open with that lateral skip where he gets out to the side, and then when that upfield push, he kind of fades it out, so he gets Brian Branch completely opened up. Like Brian Branch is no longer square. He's completely opened up basically to the sideline at this point. That explosiveness, he jabs, and you see where he drops his weight and he sits his weight down, and right at that spot you can see Brian Branch becomes flat-footed, and then all of a sudden he could take advantage of the fact that he's going to get out. Once he got Brian Branch flat-footed, he took advantage of his juice and his explosiveness, and now he's getting out of that break once again, and he's able to just work himself back over top. Like the whole setup there to get Brian Branch to settle himself, that way he could use the burst to his advantage to take off, was nasty. That is a beautiful route by Jameson Williams versus like what we saw year one. Like he's got that crazy athleticism, but of course in the NFL, everything becomes all the subtleties, and he's able to utilize that because of the way that he set it up. He's able to utilize the athletic gifts, and then he has the fingertip grab to go finish it off too. Like he put the whole package there together, and then we got to see Terrion Arnold just be awesome for multiple clips here, which it has me so excited. Because I was the crazy one that said Terrion was the best corner in that draft class before the draft, that liked him better than Quinyon Mitchell. I loved Terrion Arnold. So to see this stuff just has me so fired up. Like, this guy is going to be that dude. I can see it. He's going to be that dude. And we start off with this nasty interception. And, bro, everything came together on this interception. First off, it's an amazing grab. But the fact that it's against St. Brown, who is just does everything right. We'll see a nasty clip from St. Brown. But the fact is, again, St. Brown is awesome here. And to me, what stood out was just how square he was. Just stays square to the receiver consistently. And then when you see him transition, this is the area that I loved him in college was his transition, the way that he can get out, and the way that he got out here with not only some of the looseness and the bend, and you see that flexion to him, but then the burst as well. Like, he burst out of that transition. So, he's sticking right with St. Brown. There is no recovery that's needed here. He's right with him. Now, he does get up on the shoulder a little bit. We got to watch for the grabs, that kind of thing. Like, hey, let's be careful, right? Branch does a great job. He's a little bit lower to the ground too, but he plays through that hip. Here, it's a great contact point because he gets control of the shoulder. St. Brown can't get him out, can't get him off his shoulder, so he controls the route. You just got to watch for the hands at the end of the route when he's now going for the football. But once he controls it, reads the receiver looking back for the ball. Now he's connected, but he's staying in phase. So now he can look back for the football while staying connected. And this is just nasty positioning. And then the finish, the just floating in the air, flipping your head around. I mean, this is just an athletic play while the ball's in the air. And again, just that explosiveness, man. He is so launchy at the catch point. I don't know what the right word is. We usually have a different word than that, but that's what he is, man. And the timing was nasty, and then the finish, like, all of that came together for a fantastic rep for Terrion Arnold, bro. I'm so pumped for what this guy's going to do, and we have another good one coming. Khalif Raymond had a little crafty release here. For me, it's the eyes. It's the eye balance from Khalif Raymond, which is such a problem here. First off, the juice is crazy, so when he takes off, immediately Kirby Joseph, it just feels like he's recovering, trying to get that cornerback to just hesitate, to pause, to stop moving, and now he's taken off because, of course, he's playing at his own pace. So now Kirby's trying to make up, which is just an unfair matchup in general. But you love getting the safeties that rep. That's why they say that they need that versatility, and you can see it, they rep it. So it's not just something that's like, hey, we need him to be able to play man. We're going to rep it too, and you got to go against Khalif. That's a handful to deal with, but it's at the top of the route where he pulls it all together. The way that he paces it throughout, he's got the step, so now he's controlled, and he looks inside, and you can see Kirby Joseph starts to play that inside, and usually that's kind of the sell, right? I'm going to look the opposite way, then I'm going to snap it back the other way. So he's peeking inside to snap it back outside, but as a cornerback or a defensive back, you're like, okay, he's snapping that back outside. He snaps it outside with a single jab and then breaks it back inside. So the eyes on this were just so nuanced, and he just lost Kirby Joseph, who was trying to stick with him in trail, and it really came back to the head movement for me with Khalif that stood out just watching that rep play out. Tim Patrick's able to get himself clean, and I like the release here from Tim Patrick, right? Like the transition quickness, the way that he gets out after that single step, and he gets out really quickly. There's not a lot of false movement, and he's out of there, and he gets himself clear. He kind of gets to that swim move, but then the way that Brian Branch recovers, he gets directly in his pads, and then you can see his inside hand kind of find that bottom hip, and now he's able to play off of that. He's able to track the football. He's able to run with him. Now he's controlling the route. Tim Patrick also doesn't have maybe the best long speed, but he can run. He can definitely run, but he's just controlling the route, finds the ball. It makes me think of like the Michigan interception like years ago against Wisconsin where they just sealed the deal, where the cornerback used that inside arm and just the one-handed interception. That's what that play made me think of for Brian Branch. So Brian, let's pick that off. That way we can really talk about it like that. St. Brown or Rocky Sin. St. Brown, of course, went crazy on this one. I like that St. Brown is so disciplined that when he shakes him off the line of scrimmage, he just finishes his route the right way, and he continues to run through it the right way. Now, Rocky Sin showed some body control. I mean, he got himself back into the play a little bit. You get the missed strike from Rocky Sin, who tries to throw that punch. Now he gets lunged outside as he's trying to react to that footwork. The way that he's snapping off these routes, like how low he is to the ground is crazy here. It's so crisp. And then he breaks back to the football, has all that separation, but he finishes it off with so much detail. To get like a shortened highlight here of Kirby Joseph, again, right in that hip, inside arm. You can see that everybody has the same technique, which speaks to, I think, a lot of the coaching. It all speaks to the talent level, but the coaching, right? Like we got Deshea Townsend, who's been fantastic. I thought last year we were great in the back end. Seemingly he did his job really well, but everybody technically looks the same. And that does speak a lot to the way that you're coaching this, that everybody kind of feels like they're doing, when it looks right, it all looks the same. And for that Kirby play, it's the timing. It's the timing at which he's able to high point that football. But for Jamison, like right here, you got a Meek Robertson kind of in that pedal technique. So when you get that burst of field from Jamison Williams, now all of a sudden he's forced to recover on the play. You could see it. He's kind of going immediately into that pedal. Jamo gets out with an absolute explosive step, right? You can see him kind of just roll through his hips. Meek Robertson immediately gets caught in somewhat of a recovery mode, trying to kind of close that airspace. And because of that, once he's kind of leaned himself over, Jamo just shrugs him off. And then the way that he snaps off that route, I mean, he snaps that thing off within a couple of yards, maybe a yard. Like he's snapping that thing off immediately. But you can still see that vertical push is legit discipline. Like he's shooting out of there, he's pumping his arm, head is down. And then when he shrugs him off and he sinks, he kind of just rolls through it, right? He's bending through it. That was a smooth transition at the top of the route to work back, and then you watch his eyes through the reception on that one. Just a smooth technique throughout here. Then, of course, we have to see some DJ Reed versus Tim Patrick. I think this is our first really look at DJ Reed, I feel like, here. Tim Patrick, He had to get back. He got a couple of pass breakups. They got to show some good for Tim Patrick. Aggressive kind of skip step. He attacks right through the center line of the defender there. So he's got the aggressive skip step, and then you could see the discipline that he plays with in that vertical push. Again, the hand usage to kind of get himself clean, but in that vertical push where DJ Reed ends up kind of pausing through the transition. So you get that aggressive step, and then again, the speed at which he's getting out of these release types is very good because there's not a lot of false movement. So cornerbacks are being forced to immediately respond to it. So if that first punch doesn't land cleanly and he can't stay latched, now all of a sudden he's in a spot where he's a little bit behind. And Tim Patrick is rolling out very quickly. And as he's trying to make up that ground, Tim Patrick does a great job of selling that upfield push, snapping it off, and then pulling himself back to the ball. Maybe recognizing like, hey, I didn't create this best separation here, right? Maybe that's not my skill set. So I need to get myself to the spot where I'm pushing 7, getting back to 5, right? I'm working back to the football, and he works back to the ball there, finishes it off really well. And then Terrion Arnold's like, let me have the last laugh, at least according to these clips. And he's like, I'm going to do it on Jamo Williams, who's looked fantastic to this point. It's exactly what he did. Again, watch his hips, kind of gets cut off. As that elongated release is happening, right? You get the little hesitation, you get the 1, 2, 3, and he's just staying square with him. He's not lunging. There's no movement there. He's staying bent, staying low on his pads. And then he gets contact. It seemingly throws off the timing because of when he's lunging for the football as a reception and when Terrion attacks the ball. He's right in his hip, and it's just that explosiveness. That explosion at the catch point is crazy from Terrion, right? Forget the 40 speed. That dude can launch. He just launches himself at the catch point. So he may close, again, a little bit earlier here. Kind of reminds me of the Houston play where he got that pass breakup, which was massive. I think he got a pass breakup at the end of the game. Some people wanted to flag. But regardless, that explosiveness to close at the catch point is nasty there, and it just felt like the timing was all the way off once he got contact because he didn't shrug him off or anything. Terrion wasn't going anywhere. There was no half-man opportunity for JMO to play through because he was just square. He was straight up with him, right? There was nothing there, so he had to work with him through that top of the route, and Terrion was all over that one. Just nasty. It's got me so fired up about Terrion Arnold just watching those clips. I think that's everything that we had for takeaways that I wanted to hit on today, so I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll be back with more when we get it. Thank you, Pat, for watching, and I'm out.